Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are about to see a story of murder, greed, corruption, violence, exploitation, adultery, and treachery. Those things we all hold near and dear to our hearts. Thank you.
Hi, so welcome to my latest video. So, it is January 2023 and I'm currently working on a new production of the musical Chicago. And I thought I'd do something a bit different with this one because I've done Chicago before. I've got another video of some clips that I took out of the production I did back in 2018. So if you want to see some clips from the show, you can go and watch that one. I'll probably put some clips on this one, but this one's going to be more of a behind the scenes look, a very non-glamorous look at what goes on and how I go about learning a show. Now, before we get too far into this, I need you to know that everybody learns a show differently. Okay, I've got the way that I like to approach it and the way that works for me. Some of these ideas may seem pretty silly to you. You might go, that's stupid, I don't like that, or that's not the way that I got told to do it, and that's fine. At the end of the day, as long as the music gets played correctly in the show and it works well, nobody really cares about how you learn it, as long as you can learn it. The other benefit that I've got is I usually get a bit more time than a lot of other people. Some people might only get a few weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe even 2 or 3 weeks. Some people are even forced to sight read it, meaning that they're given the book very soon before the show, like 24 hours before the show, and they're just expected to read it. That's an excruciatingly hard thing to do. Especially with a show like Chicago. It'll be interesting to see if there's actually anybody out there who can just read well enough. But given the speciality and the sort of very particular percussion parts of this show, it'd be interesting to see if it could even be done without people having played the show before. Alright, so very non-glamorous look at how I go about learning a show. So if you've never done a musical theatre show before, some of this may be very, very new to you. If you've done theatre shows before, you've probably got your own methods on how you go about it. So anyway, first thing that happens is you get given the book. This is the drum and percussion book for Chicago, as you can see, Chicago. And it's by Origin Theatrical. Okay, that's who has the rights. So everything in here I need to learn, or at least try to. Now, these books often get damaged, marked up, sometimes they have pages partly torn out of them, all that sort of stuff. And it costs the production company money if they have to hand back a damaged book. It's something in the realms of like, I don't know, I'm thinking it's like $100 a book, something like that. I don't want to cost anybody any money. The other thing is that I don't like to have to turn pages when I'm playing. For me, the importance is playing the notes and playing the music, and not turning pages. If I could have a page turner, I would, but I don't. So I do something a bit different, which you'll probably see in other videos I've done, and I'll explain in a minute. So what I do is, the first thing I do is I scan the book. I used to just photocopy it and use liquid paper and pens and pencils and stuff to mark it all up. But nowadays I scan it into my iPad and I use the program Score to just clean it up and get rid of old pencil markings and things that I don't need to know. For example, on this page here, up in the top right hand corner, I've got drums. Now the idea of that is that so you know that that is part of the drum book and that the drummer has to play it. The thing is, I am the drummer and I know that I've got to play that, so that's irrelevant. It's number 11 we reached for the gun. Well, I don't need to know that because I know it. So I don't need to be told that. So there's a whole heap of information on some of these charts that I just simply don't need. So what I do is I go through with my iPad and I select those and I just delete them. It means my eye isn't being drawn to that while I'm playing. There's some other things in here. Sometimes there's things that I just know. So for example, it'll have rim shot. Well, I know that that's a rim shot. The reason why I know it's a rim shot is because I've studied the music. I don't need it to tell me. So I might delete that. I might put in some extra information. So I might write some extra vocal cues, or maybe there's some dialogue that kind of helps me remember where I am, things like that. Or maybe the trumpet starts playing at a certain point, and that's a good reminder or a cue for me to do something. So I'll write that in. After that's done, I then print it out. And it'll print out obviously in a big stack of paper. And then I go through and I put all the songs together as a full piece. And just to give you an idea, this is what I do with it. I put it together as a sheet. So this means I don't have to turn pages. I've got quite a big music stand here. It fits 4.5 to 5 pages, depending on how I set it up. And I sticky tape the pages together, and then I put a little black ending part on it. So as if the song is overlapping with another one, I don't get to the end and then accidentally run into another page that's behind it. And I go through and I make my own personal markings. Fluoro yellow for me means there's a time signature and you better be aware of it. I've gone through and made the cowbell notes squares, so as I know that clearly that's a cowbell note. It's not a hi-hat, it's not something else, I'm not getting confused. I circle my crash cymbals, so all the crash cymbals and splash cymbals, I put a little circle around the X, just so as I can clearly see it. And I also color code my wood blocks or my percussion blocks. So as you can see here, you might be able to see I've got a purple one, a red one, and a blue one. In the other production that I did, I used the red, the blue, and an orange. This one I bought a purple one for this show, so I'm going purple, red, and blue. And I'll actually color code those. So in this case, I've used kind of like a pink highlighter to represent the red wood block. And that means really obviously, but as I'm coming up to it, I can clearly see that there is a wood block coming, because I can see red fluoro markings out of the corner of my eye as I'm approaching it. Same as this time signature here. As I'm approaching it, I can see that there's a time signature coming up because it's a fluoro yellow marking. Another good example is this one here, which is all about that jazz. So I will go through and use different color highlighters on repeats. So the green is a vamp there. Blue is another vamp over here. Okay. And then I've got blue wood blocks through here. Little things like that. So I can put all those markings on, and I can also go through with whiteout and mark out any notes that I just sort of think, oh look, I don't think that really needs to be there. So there might be a crash cymbal that I'm just like, look, that's just getting in the way of the music. I don't think that that's appropriate. So I'll white it out and I'll put in something else. I might replace it with a regular hi-hat or something. So I kind of go through and I shape the music just a little bit, just to clean it up. There might be some rolls in this show, in this book in particular. There's some rolls where it's crotchet tied to a drag, which I'm not a big fan of. I don't like that. It just confuses me mentally when I play it. So I just deleted 2 little notes of the drag and tied it through, and I just play it that way. Alright, so and then what I do is I number the pages in the corner here, 1 through to however many sheets I've got. And that's going to allow me to play all that jazz all the way through to the very end. I don't need to worry about turning pages, I don't need to think about, oh gee, what's coming up next. I can just read it down and be done with it. If there are any vamps that are added or cuts that are made, I can just pencil them in. And it's not wrecking the book. The book just stays at home, just stays in the cupboard, stays nice and clean, and then at the end of the production, I can hand it back. Or if I need to, because I've scanned it, I need to print out another page because there are like a whole heap of editing that's happened to that, or maybe there's a cut, or maybe a little song's been taken out. I can just dump that, okay, and then print out another one. So that protects the book. All right. I've already done that for this show, and I carry all those charts around in a special little folder like this, which my girlfriend made for me very lovingly. It works very nicely. It can hold 5 pages. Anything longer than that, I'll just hold the page. And it's got a little pencil case on there, so I can always take a pencil. Always take a pencil to rehearsal and an eraser. So I've got 2 of these. I've got a slightly smaller one, which I think is in here somewhere, but I can't see it. There it is, up there, but you probably can't see it. It's got a yellow handle, and this one's got a red handle, just so I can tell the difference. This one's the better one. I prefer that one. Alright, so after all the charts put together, and I'm ready to kind of start rehearsing the show, then I've got to figure out an equipment setup. Going through the show and looking at all the music and listening to the soundtrack a lot, watching different versions of the show, getting an idea of what's involved, getting in contact with people that have played the show before is really good, because you can ask them ideas on how they approached it and what they did, were there any parts that you kind of got to be aware of, things like that. And I've been very lucky. I've gotten in contact with some people that have actually played the show on Broadway. And several percussionists that have done it before around the world. So there's videos on YouTube. You can watch all sorts of stuff just to get an idea on how things are going to work. Now that doesn't mean that your show is going to be exactly the same as theirs, but it just gives you an idea of how to interpret the music, and what sort of things are going to be coming at you. So after I've got an idea of the music, then I've got to figure out what equipment I'm going to use. And then I need to sort of design a practice setup for that. Now, if you're lucky and you've got your own studio or something, you can set it all up and you can make as much noise as you want and practice away until your heart's content and learn the part properly. I can't do that. I've got neighbours, I live in suburbia, so I've got to try and figure out a way to do some practice. So this is what I call my flight simulator. This is a practice drum kit. It's a Pearl export kit that I put rags in the drum. I've put mesh heads, like the silent stroke heads, on. That way I can hit it as hard as I want and not really going to hurt anybody. I've even put a homemade rubber rim on that, so if I want a rim shot, okay, it's not really going to hurt anybody. I've got a little foam splash cymbal replica. It's just a piece of foam that I've cut out in a circle and stuck on the splash cymbal. This is where my castanets will go. So you're aware of the 6 Merry Murderesses, and Cell Block Tango starts with that tick, 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 tick on the castanets. They'll go there. Splash cymbal here. My Miller machine for my triangle is there.
Whatever happened to fair dealing and pure ethics and nice manners?
3 wood blocks. Now, if you notice, while I'm practicing, I've got a piece of foam, jigsaw foam, just cut out and just electrically taped to it. That way I can get a rough idea.
I ran to the bedroom, but he followed me.
Got a cowbell here that I've stuffed a rag into and put a foam block on just to kill the volume. The cymbals are Zildjian practice cymbals. They're the quiet cymbals that have all the holes in them. Me and my partner came up with the idea of covering them in like a felt and wrapping some material around them. So as you can see, they look like a big round disc. And I've done the same for the hi-hat. And I've got an 18-inch crash here as well, which has the same thing. It's set on a rack setup. I find the rack setup works really well for fitting in tight spaces. A lot of the shows I play, I'm in the Aubrey Entertainment Centre or somewhere where there's just not enough space to have all the legs sticking out everywhere. So I found the rack systems work. I was never a rack guy. I didn't really like drum racks until I started doing music theatre, and then I really saw the use for them. They're really useful for that. 22-inch bass, 14-inch snare. I've gone with a 13-inch tom and a 14-inch tom. I've ripped the tom off here, the 12-inch that would normally be, sorry, it's normally 10-12, I've ripped the 10 off, and the 10's over there, sort of in storage. And then I've put in this percussion rack on a stand. I've got a ratchet. I've got a slapstick here. So that's for the court scene, where he slaps Roxy and he goes, "You're mine, you're mine, you're mine."
So, you told him that you loved your husband. What did he say that? It doesn't matter, you're mine, you're mine, you're mine.
That effect. Behind me I've got a glockenspiel. Over here I will have a Yamaha DTX unit, DTX Multi-12 unit, that will have sound effects.
I was getting ready for bed when suddenly the doorbell rang.
It's just a nice way to be able to trigger those sound effects. But on my chart I do actually have to play them. Now the original show has like a Foley effect, so you actually use the percussion instruments to get those effects. But some people want to go for the actual sound effect. So things like the gunshots, instead of just hitting the snare drum and getting a bang from the snare drum, I actually want a gunshot sound effect. So I'll be triggering that for the Yamaha DTX unit. This is just a mock-up of where my stage monitor will go. So the last production that I did, I was on stage and I could look down and see most of the cast and I could watch them. In this production we're going to be, I believe, yet to be verified, I believe we're going to be on scaffolding way above the stage. So I've got to be able to see the stage to be able to do the sound effects properly. So that's going to be where my stage monitor goes. And I've actually got two little CRT TVs with a camera. I don't know if you can see the plastic bag there with the pink tape. That's actually an old CRT TV out of a caravan that I bought for like $20 off an old lady years ago. That'll be sitting up here, and then I'll have a camera pointed at the stage, and I'll be able to see what's going on. So, typical bass drum. This will be a table for things like my brushes, my sticks. I've got a little table down here underneath it, which will have my slide whistle.
The defense calls Roxy Hot.
I'll have a siren whistle hanging around my neck. So there's the glockenspiel. I think that's about it. Obviously the triangle will go on the mill machine. And I think that's about it. Obviously I've chosen to separate out the glock parts, the glockenspiel parts, so I can practice them individually or separately. And they'll just sit up there, I'll work through them and I'll play them and I'll get back up, push back. Yeah, so that's pretty much the setup. And what I've got to do now is run the songs over and over and over and over again, and then obviously go to rehearsal. Now when I go to rehearsal, we're rehearsing in a local high school, in their hall, which we have access to. Pretty common for theatre groups around here to approach a school and just ask, look, can we use the hall for, I don't know, a few months. Sometimes they'll pay a small fee or something to do that. Meanwhile, the cast are rehearsing in usually a different location. So when a band rehearsal starts, and band rehearsals officially started last Friday, so whatever the date for that is, I'll put it in here somewhere. So I've got another rehearsal this Friday. The first rehearsal was just the first act. We just gently ran through songs from the first act just to make sure that we understood what was going on and that all our music lined up and that sort of thing. Typical first rehearsal. It's a train wreck. It doesn't really sound very good. People are messing up, they're playing in the wrong key and then suddenly realise, oh, I'm meant to be in a different key, or you know, I'm playing the ride cymbal and suddenly realise, oops, that's actually a wood block, you know, things like that. So it's just working through the process. So I've got to take some of this equipment to rehearsal, so I've got to take the castanets, I've got to take the wood blocks and the carbon and splash them in a triangle, I'm going to take this table. This auxiliary equipment will eventually go with me, and the Glock will eventually go with me as well, but I tend to phase the equipment in. I don't turn up the first rehearsal with just all of the equipment. because a lot of the time you don't get through all the music in the first rehearsal, or at least in my experience anyway. Some companies might force it through and just not we're doing the whole first act or whatever, or the whole show or whatever. So yeah, that gives you a bit of an idea on kind of what's going on. As you see, it's not a pretty setup, but it does get the job done. So you might see the black padding underneath the drum kit here. That is just to get the drum kit up off the floor a little bit, because this area flooded last year with all the rains that we had here in Australia. So there's like a ½ inch of water through here, so I had to get the drum kit up off the floor and the equipment up off the floor so it doesn't get wet. So alright, I might run a couple of songs just to give you a bit of an idea on kind of how it works. It's not going to sound great from your perspective because it's going to sound like I'm hitting bits of foam and that sort of stuff, but you'll get an idea. Might see if I can layer the music over in the background so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Okay. So that's about it. Some of the things I've got to figure out. I've got to figure out how to do some mallet changes. So I've got to change from sticks to Glock mallets and back again. So I'm going to have to try and figure out how to do that change quickly and efficiently. So at the moment I'm playing with sticks, picking up Glock mallets, but I might be able to make what's called a multi-mallet. So I might be able to get the end of a glockenspiel mallet and then stick that into the end of here and drill a hole and stick it in, glue it in. That way I'll have a good time to stick over, but we'll figure that out. That's to come. And this is all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that nobody sees. They're like, oh yeah, Gary just turned up and plays the show. And it's not like that at all. I've got to build the setup. It's not like a trumpet or a violin or any other instrument where you can turn up and you can just play that instrument because that's what you play. The percussion for a show like this, particularly Chicago, is very customized to the show. So you've got to build the whole thing around you and then sometimes change it. You might have an idea that, oh yeah, the glockenspiel works really well here. And then when you get into the theatre, you suddenly realise that's not a great idea, it's going to have to go over there, in which case you've got to relearn the choreography, so to speak, to get around the kit. So yeah, alright, let's run a song and see how it works. Okay, so on my phone here, I've got the audio from the last production that I did back in 2018. I'm using that as the basis for this show. This production is going to be different, and I'm fully aware of that, and I'm going to have to change some things, but it just gives me an idea on how to run this thing down and get used to sort of playing it again. So let's run the overture, why not? So I've got the overture loaded up here, I'll stick that up there. I'll put on a set of headphones so I can hear it. Plug it in. And you're probably not going to hear, well, you won't hear this because I've got headphones on. Put a set of sticks, I'll get the book out of the way. Alright, now this could be a train wreck. I don't know, I've got no idea. I've run this a couple of times. We'll see how we go. Alright. Go back to the beginning of the overture. And off we go. How do I think I went? It was a bit sloppy, okay? I haven't run it that much, so there was a couple of missed hits, a couple of stick clicks in there, so I've got to clean it up. So, how do I do that? I play it again, and again, and again. And then I play it at rehearsal, again, and again, and again. And then once I've got it, obviously. That's the way you learn any piece of music. And then I've got to figure out doing page turns. Now, because of the way I've got this, I've got that page there and I've got the beginning of that page there. That's on there. So I'm going from the overture into all that jazz. So I can do those rim shots or those snare drum hits. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I cross over. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. As you can see, I had a hand free at that point because I was only using one hand. So that gives me time to change page. And I literally just dump the song on the floor. Once it's played, I don't care. It's done, my job is done. I'll put it down here, I'll put it down there. So that gives you a bit of an idea on kind of how I'm going about it. One thing I did just realise, I've got a metal bar here. During the show there is a sound effect of some clanks. So it's something that comes up in the show. It's like 2 to 4 bars, it's like a vamp, and they want some metallic clanks. So we're still sort of deciding on what sort of sound we want, so that's what I've got so far. I might use metal, I might use a different thing, I might use a brake drum, I don't know yet, but we'll go with that for the moment, we'll see what works.
Ladies and gentlemen, we present Justice.
The state of Illinois versus Roxy Hart for the murder of Fred Casely. Thank you.
Alright, hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into what goes on behind the scenes. I've got about 10 weeks to learn this show now. It's on in, when is it, late March, very early April. So I've got about 6 rehearsals with the band, 4 rehearsals with the cast, maybe 1 or 2 tech rehearsals, and then that's it, opening night. Alright, hopefully that gives you a bit of insight. I might add some more to this later on. Okay, have fun.